Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 282. So we start the new arc here, which is an adaptation of, I guess it's mostly this, but it's including Kakashi's story and also the third one, Naruto's story as well. Just Sasuke's story being the absolute focus. So it's adapting this arc. So I suppose it basically is an adaptation of, as you can see here, the Uchiha and the Heavenly Stardust. So this is the source material. It's the light novels. Yes, there is an ongoing manga adaptation, but of course that itself is just an adaptation of the books. So this is a quite interesting situation in that we're seeing in a relatively short period of time, like the kind of newest novels be adapted into both manga and also anime. So interesting to see that happen. Now, of course, Sasuke is a popular character. You understand why they're doing this, but it is interesting from an adaptation point of view what way they are making this work. Where, obviously, the middle book in the trilogy of novels covering Redaku is getting the focus. Now, interestingly, unlike the manga adaptation, which is basically not really doing much connection to the first book, and it's just sort of and Kakashi fed us this information because he's doing something on the side. The anime adaptation does actually have certain scenes from the Kakashi book, which is the first book that you're meant to read in the sequence. It has some scenes from this of him being the tutor to the kind of prince, to be of Redaku. So that's actually quite good, and it gives me some confidence that by the time they get a little bit later into the books, because these two, for at least the first 3/4 of Sasuke's story, the Kakashi book is ongoing at the same time. Where there's a certain point at which the ending of this book gets reported to Sasuke in this book. And then there is an ending of this one that happens completely after the Kakashi book. So that's the kind of important thing to keep in mind there. And it makes me hopeful that we'll get some of the bigger Kakashi moments that are actually really, really cool that I think fans would really like to see animated. And we get that. Because what I would say is that, yeah, definitely, the Sasuke book is much more interesting, start to finish, than the Kakashi book. Not that this is bad or anything like that. It's just there's a little bit of a this one has the whole Sasuke Sakura dynamic, the kind of in prison investigating type thing, and dinosaurs in Naruto. It has all that stuff going for it, whereas this one is a bit more just full on politics, and so I get why they're maybe choosing to keep this more in the background here, as just the setup for the bigger plot, which is directly investigating the idea that Naruto is sick with an illness that the Sage of Six Paths also had. And so they're going to Redaku to basically figure out how the Sage of Six Paths healed himself from this illness, what exactly it is. And so that is why Kakashi is investigating more in Redaku, and then Sasuke has gone to the observatory where the Sage of Six Paths recovered, but is now being used as a prison that they're building a telescope at. So, it does a decent job at explaining sort of in a way why that there actually is another book ongoing at the same time, without focusing on it too much. Because the way that this works is that they basically in this first episode cover about the first 35 pages for literally the first chapter of this book. And they get to the point where they're about a third of the way through this book. So you can see they are very much are skipping over most of the Kakashi content. But like I said, if they cover the big Kakashi moments like they seem to be, I think that has some potential. I like that they're not leaving out the actual, specific politics in Redaku plot, because I think that is somewhat important. It will be interesting to see, when we get to the end, do they touch on what happens in the Naruto book, which I haven't read yet because it's not out in English yet, I think until March. So I don't actually have the full ending of the story myself, but we'll see where they go with it, for sure, because that one seems interesting just by itself. So Beyond that, the setup at the start is quite interesting in that they replayed this scene actually like kind of like twice, almost like 3 times in the episode. The idea of Sasuke arriving in Rediku and finding out that the people of Rediku have the tradition of when you marry someone you exchange rings, and he kind of finds that somewhat interesting when he hears about it. Now, interestingly, like we of course know, Sakura is going to play a big role in this story as well. They don't introduce her yet in this first episode. Obviously, from the preview, you can see she turns up as well. But, we're still waiting to get there. But obviously, it suggests that there's going to be a little bit of kind of that shipping dynamic between those two, developing their relationship as they kind of work together on this mission, which is going to be very cool. That's probably the core dynamic that you're excited to see in this, of course. But for now, you see Sasuke's kind of like devotion to wanting to save Naruto here. When Naruto doesn't want him to sort of put himself at so much risk, Sasuke goes anyway. And you can see that it is a somewhat debilitating kind of illness that Naruto has. Without spoiling too much, it's some sort of a kind of like chakra kind of like disease type thing that he has. Because like from a kind of, I suppose, technical point of view, they are both characters who have heavily done stuff with like tailed beasts and like heavy use of chakra. So it kind of helps to explain why there is that kind of connection between the two. But we'll get to the explanation stuff because, of course, the cliffhanger ending here is Kakashi on his side of the mission finding the book that is like the manuscript of the Sage of Six Paths. And the idea is that he's going to need to relay that to Sasuke, as Sasuke also investigates more specifically what the sage did at the observatory. Given that, like, okay, they're going to find out what he was up to at the time, and then here find out what specifically he did here to actually, like, recover. And in more modern times, is whatever he did still around? Is it still a possibility to, like, get the cure, like, again? They're the kind of big questions. But the plot, of course, is that Sasuke basically gets himself put into prison in Rediku at the observatory, where apparently they are digging to ultimately build a big telescope at the observatory. The prisoners are doing that. So he's here because of basically eventually he wants to get to the library that is in the prison, which has books that go back to the kind of like old times. So that's what he's ultimately trying to get to. They don't quite get to it here, but that is why ultimately Sasuke is kind of sneaking out of a cell and figuring out what's going on here. So you get introduced to his cellmates, who in this episode like aren't super important that you know who they are. We'll get more kind of details on them as we go on. But the main details here are kind of just introducing sort of like the prison warden and then the kind of threat which keeps the kind of prisoners in their cells in what is otherwise a relatively like lax sort of like how like monitored they are, that they can just open their cells. The reason is that they have this they call it like a dragon, and a lot of them assume it's some sort of a weird summoning animal, but obviously it's actually a dinosaur called Mello that just patrols, and if you're out of your cell when you're not like technically allowed to be, you will be attacked and basically eaten by this dinosaur. Now, there's a few interesting points here. When Sasuke confronts Mello when he escapes, it's revealed that the dinosaur is immune to genjutsu. Similarly, they also reveal that the warden is also immune to genjutsu, because they don't specifically call it out here, but it's described that like he has glass eyes. That's the actual like reveal that is from the novel. They more look like kind of like, ninja tech eyes that he actually has. But the idea is that because they're not actual eyes, it means Sasuke's Sharingan genjutsu stuff isn't going to work on him, which is quite interesting. So he has the kind of attention of the warden here. So, it highlights that Sasuke is going to have a hard time getting a lot of this stuff done. On the Kakashi side of the plot, we get that he is tutoring the prince of Rediku, Nanara. While what's actually happened in Rediku is that the king has died, but the prime minister has more or less taken over and is basically controlling the princess, which is the older of the two heirs. And so the prime minister is the one who has the control here. But the idea is that sort of like Nanara is like the kind of destined sort of like next to be kind of leader type thing. And so Kakashi is teaching him how to read and write so he can be a better leader. And we get this, the kind of big political thing on that side of things is that the land of Retaku is struggling with famine and drought at this time. So what they're going to do is actually go to war with another land and claim that land for themselves so they can, you know, get around it that way. So it's obviously to some degree a misguided thing to go to war at this point in time when the nation is struggling, but it's a desperate sort of last ditch thing. And the, you know, reveal is like basically where are they specifically targeting, and we'll get that hopefully as the arc progresses. So in my mind, it's actually a pretty good adaptation. I much prefer the way they're doing it here than they're doing it in the manga. The manga, like I said, is just sort of treating the Kakashi stuff as completely like background information that only is there to serve the Sasuke story. Whereas I like that this is actually highlighting that Kakashi is up to something and it's a very important part of the mission. That, in a way, Kakashi's is the main mission, and Sasuke has kind of, in a way, like almost gone against Naruto to do this part of the mission. So I like that the anime is making a bigger kind of deal out of this. Of course, I'd still say, like, read the novels because it seems like the most in-depth kind of version of it. You just don't have the visuals. But this is so far pretty good. And I think we know we're going, at the very least, into kind of February with these arcs. So we're going to get episodes for the rest of this month, and at least I guess the start of February, because if they're only covering one Sasuke chapter here, like, we're gonna have to have probably at least 4 or 5 episodes, maybe 6 to cover this completely. And then we don't even know how they're going to tackle whatever happens with the Naruto story. They might just sum that up as like the end of the Sasuke story is roughly the ending of it, and we don't need the events of the 3rd book to even happen. So interesting stuff, like a few mysteries, of course, set up with what exactly is going on here, and then how will they specifically find the cure to what's happened to Naruto. And then the Sage of Six Paths stuff being like, you know, an interesting kind of insight into like something that happened to him. So overall, pretty interesting stuff. I like the approach with the animation, and I'm just interested to see how they execute on some of the bigger moments as we go through this story. That's what I'm interested in to see. So yeah, it looks like a pretty positive start to the year for Boruto with the adaptation of some pretty good novels, and then we're going to go into manga adaptation stuff immediately after that. So, you know, we're getting back on track, it seems like, with the anime. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this episode and what I have to say about it. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.